Hi, welcome to this part of my guide and review of the FlexTale Solo Adventuring Toolkit. If you haven't seen the other parts of this guide and review, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time we are going to focus on unorthodox approaches. In the last part of this review, we went through one player, one character, and one player, multiple characters approaches to solo role playing, but here you have some very interesting out of the box way of handling solo RPG sessions. In this section of the book, things are handled a bit more open-ended, overlapping, so I don't think it will be too necessary for me to read several paragraphs. I will focus on just a few of them, and I will give you my thoughts and opinions on what is covered in this section. First, we have information on the reverse role. This is basically like the video game Dungeon Keeper. Maybe you haven't played that, but I think most people have because it's somewhat of a classic, or perhaps cult classic, and it's that sort of game where you play as the overlord, as the evil boss of the minions of the dungeon monsters, and through the use of traps and minions, you are trying to defeat the adventurers. So here they tell you that you can play a solo RPG just like that. And I will tell you about two really good role-playing games where you play as the bad guy controlling the dungeon, or even an entire area, your evil kingdom. One is the Dark Lord role-playing game, and the other one is the Wicked Ones role-playing game. I'm going to put links to the playlist in the description. And in the Dark Lord role-playing game, you feel as if you are playing as Sauron. Now, the difficulty when it comes to playing that as a solo game is that it is required that at least 3 people participate as player characters because there's going to be backstabbing. You could do it with 2 people, I guess, but it's not going to be the same thing. So if you want to play a solo RPG session with that one, I would recommend that you use Abraham's method. The link will be in the description below to simulate a sort of artificial intelligence for the other Dark Lords. However, take into consideration that I haven't played the Dark Lord role-playing game using Abraham's method, so I'm not entirely sure when it comes to the potential obstacles when playing such an experience, so it would be a sort of experiment if you attempt that. And when it comes to the Wicked Ones, I think that one is a bit more viable, especially because backstabbing is kept to a minimum, and it's a bit more personal or intimate. That is, the Wicked Ones, the Lords of the Dungeon, they feel a bit of a lower rank, or rather lower power level when compared to the Dark Lords. The Dark Lord, like I said, he's basically like Sauron or Cain from the Legacy of Cain video games, or Ain's Own Goal from the Overlord anime. But with Wicked Ones, you're like the typical ogre or orc or goblin boss or leaders that have taken over a dungeon, so it's a bit slightly more simple when it comes to the scope. So here they mention some potential cons to this experience, that some people are not used to playing as evil characters, or that they could feel like the experience is too different from your traditional RPG experience, and things like that. But with many things, just like in real life, you just need to practice. So if you want to play that experience where you are controlling the lord or the lords of a domain or a kingdom or a dungeon or whatever, it is quite possible. It just needs getting used to it. Then we have War Scale. If I remember correctly, yes, here it says an entire book will be dedicated to War Scale rules and options. I am going to put a link in the description to this video where I talk about 3 systems, if I remember correctly. Yes, 3 systems that you can use to play like a mass battle sort of game. Because in this section of War Scale, the author tells you that you could run a campaign featuring just like an entire army or even armies. So it's going to be a completely different experience. Things can proceed a bit fast. It's going to be a bit more action-packed because it's going to feel like a military campaign, like those role-playing games that are focused on war, or those settings like Birthright from Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's sort of like a military campaign type of experience. So in those sorts of solo sessions, things can get a bit abstract, but at the same time, the scale is so grand and you can experiment with different unit types as you're moving your armies across the different lands and kingdoms. But yes, one of the risks when it comes to this style of solo play is that you do not feel as emotionally connected because you're controlling an entire army. Maybe you only feel connected to your general or your king or your emperor or whatever. But when it comes to the rest of the units, maybe you want a stronger connection that can only be felt or experienced with a smaller, your typical RPG group. And in this section of the book, the author also talks about a real-time strategy sort of experience, like StarCraft, Warcraft, Age of Empires, where you have different units and buildings. And again, the Dark Lord role-playing game and the Wicked Ones role-playing game, they are perfect for this sort of campaign. When it comes to the Dark Lord RPG, that one feels a bit more on the real-time strategy side of things because you have different units, you have buildings, you have ways of developing and crafting different things. And although the Wicked Ones also contains that sort of playstyle, in the Dark Lord, it's a bit more geared towards that real-time strategy feel because you have, like I said, a huge area, many different castles and forts and villages that you have taken over. But when it comes to Wicked Ones, most of the time you're going to be focusing on your dungeon. You are going to be heading out into the world, carrying out raids, defeating your enemies, but it feels more like more personal, a bit more lower scale, unlike the Dark Lord, where you feel so powerful like a demigod on the level of Sauron, taking over Middle Earth or whatever setting that you are using. So both of those RPGs work great, but even the strongest Wicked One feels like that character could be the lieutenant of a Dark Lord. So it all depends on the sort of power level that you want to play at. If you want to go full evil demigod, go to the Dark Lord RPG. If you want something a bit less exaggerated on the power scale, then go to the Wicked Ones. And the Wicked Ones role-playing game leans a bit more towards storytelling, while the Dark Lord RPG offers a more tactical or simulationist experience. And at the end of this section, 2 more variants are offered. For example, Self-DM. You might consider playing a traditional game, but simulating interactions. With this variant, you pose questions and interact with non-player characters as normal, but then you use the myriad of tables contained in this book to dynamically generate responses. And then there's one-on-one play. One of the reasons to even consider solo play in the first place is if you can't find other players to play with. However, if you manage to find at least a single person, then it turns into a one-on-one play experience with one game master and one player. And there are some specialized RPGs that are perfect for that, like Scarlet Heroes, the Beowulf setting for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. In fact, you could dedicate an entire video to that. Maybe I'll make a video about that. I have talked about that in some past videos, but you can always improve upon what you have already said. So yes, maybe I will make a revised video talking about the one-on-one play experience. So overall, when it comes to this section feels a bit promotional like the other one, where the author tells you about different Flex AI products that you can use to enhance the solo adventuring toolkit, because here the author tells you about the War Scale book that is coming out, I don't know when, but this book contains all of those rules concerning the real-time strategy feel and handling an empire, moving about in a mass battles sort of campaign. So it's going to be quite interesting. I hope that book turns out great, just like the solo adventuring toolkit. But in the meantime, if you want to play a military mass battles sort of campaign, or 4X, Conquer, Exploit, all of that, I recommend that you check out the video in the description below, where I talk about 3 systems to simulate mass battles sort of experience. And definitely check out the Wicked Ones role-playing game and the Dark Lord role-playing game if you are thinking of playing as the bad guys. Or perhaps you could be like the likable villain or the anti-hero. There are some examples of this, for example in the Overlord video game, where the so-called heroes are actually bad guys as well, but they are hypocrites unlike you that are more honest in your devious deeds. So thanks for watching this part of the guide and review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you and see you later.